Good evening. Welcome everyone to IKG's Wisdom Wednesday. I am your host, Ajwa, and I am so happy that you are here joining us for yet another Wisdom Wednesday presentation. As always, we do ask that you connect with us by letting us know where you are checking in from, and we will be able to shout you out just as a quick welcome. As always, I want to start out by just letting you all know some of the programming that we do here at IKG. IKG Wisdom Wednesday is a free monthly lecture series that we hold here now via Zoom webinar. But with IKG, we also have other programming, including our Egypt on the Potomac field trips. And we have one more field trip left for the season, and they are held the first Saturday of the month. And so the first Saturday of November will be the final Egypt on Potomac field trip for this 2025 season. And just want to give you that date. That will be Saturday, November 1st. So that's coming up in a few weeks. We have both a 10 a.m. and a 2 p.m. session. So we do ask that you go to ikgculturalresourcecenter.com to sign up and purchase your ticket. You do not want to miss it. We also want to let you know about the 2026 Egypt Light of the World Study Tour. This is a special study tour because it's going to be our director, Tony Browder's last tour that he will be directing. And all future tours will be directed by the great Atlantis Browder. So it's going to definitely be a treat, but you can find more information about the Ancient Egypt Light of the World study tour at ikgculturalresourcecenter.com. And for tonight's program, I just want to go over a few housekeeping notes. This is a Zoom webinar, which means that your cameras and your microphones are automatically muted. We do ask, though, that you engage with us via the chat box. And at the end of tonight's presentation, we will have a Q&A session. And we ask that you post any questions for our speaker in the Q&A box. So before we get started, I do just want to say hey to everybody checking in. We do see Brooklyn in the house. Welcome. Philly is in the house, Philadelphia. Lawrenceville, Georgia, welcome. Rochester, New York, welcome. We have South Carolina in the house, Delaware, DC, of course, is in the house. Houston, Texas, welcome. Waldorf, Maryland, thank you for joining us. Clinton, Maryland, Chicago, Illinois, greetings to the family in the Chi. Maryland, of course. East Norriton, Pennsylvania, welcome. Kirkland, Connecticut, hey, hey, Connecticut is special to me because I'm from Connecticut. So shout out to Kirkland, Connecticut. Again, Chicago, Brooklyn, Bowie, New Jersey, welcome, welcome. We have Marshall Creek, Pennsylvania, Inglewood, California in the house. Thank you all. And there's still more coming in, but I do want to just say thank you for joining us this evening. We are pleased to have joining us Maurice Carney of Friends of the Congo. We've had this partnership with them to help honor the Break the Silence Week for well over 15 years now. So we are very pleased that they are able to join us again tonight. Tonight's presentation is 100 Years of Lumumba. Where is Africa heading? This year marks the centenary of Patrice Lumumba. Like Medger Evers, Malcolm X, and Frantz Fanon, Lumumba was born in 1925, a vintage year for revolutionaries. This year's Congo Week presentation will explore the legacy of Lumumba and his relevance to what is currently unfolding in the Congo and Africa in general. The scramble for Congo and Africa is as intense today as it was during the 1960s when the CIA overthrew the Lumumba government. The Trump administration and its billionaire class capitalists are in the midst of a mad pursuit for critical minerals in the Congo. Their pursuit is compounded by the Trump administration's strategic battle against Chinese dominance in the mining sector in Congo and Africa. I am very happy to welcome Maurice Carney to IKG's Wisdom Wednesday. He is coming to the stage now. Thank you, Maurice. And thank you for that wonderful description. I know tonight is going to be a very powerful and informative session. And again, family, do engage us via the chat. And if you have questions for Maurice, you can place those questions in the Q&A box. And we will have the Q&A session at the end of the program. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Ajwa. And of course, thanks to the Institute for Karmic Guidance, Wisdom Wednesdays, for just incredible consistency in supporting our Pan-African solidarity work around the Congo. And I'd like to take a moment just to talk about that work a bit in terms of Friends of the Congo and what we do. We see ourselves in the tradition of institutions, former institutions, like the Friends of Abyssinia. When Ethiopia was under attack in the 1930s by Italy, you had the likes of CLR James, Jomo Kenyatta, Amy Ashwood Garvey, my brother Marischal out of the Caribbean, a range of Pan-Africanists rallied outside of the US. You had folks who were ordinary folks in the streets in the US lining up to go to support Ethiopia, Abyssinia, because the country was under attack. You even had folks from the Congo going to support Abyssinia. So it is in that tradition, that Pan-African solidarity tradition, that Friends of the Congo was formed. The Congo was, after the fall or near the end of the years of Mobutu, was under assault. An assault that resulted in what the United Nations says is the deadliest conflict in the world since World War II. So brothers and sisters from the Caribbean, from here in the US, the continent, came together under the guidance of a remarkable Congolese freedom fighter by the name of Alufwele Mbui-Kalala. He used to be right there in Washington, D.C. We came together to establish Friends of the Congo some 25 years ago. And we established the institution with two overarching aims. One was to raise global consciousness about what's transpiring in the Democratic Republic of the Congo through education, writings, publications, productions of films, whatever avenue of people's activity that we can tap into to share why the heart of the African continent, dominated by the Congo, mattered. So that's one part of our aim as an institution. The second is to provide support to local institutions, those that are on the front lines. We know that that's how change is affected. We can do as much as we can as Africans abroad. However, it is going to be Africans on the front lines that make the ultimate change. So that forms the two aims of our institution. And in alignment with the first aim, raising global consciousness, we have Congo Week, which takes place every third week, usually every third week of October. And we've been doing that for 18 years. And that's basically, in essence, a global teaching where people join from different parts of the world to organize teach-ins, organize film screenings, do host fundraisers, put on rallies, you name it, in support of the Congo and the Congolese people. And that's what's going to be unfolding next week, kicking off on Sunday, October 19th. And it will run through Saturday, October 25th, when we kick off Congo Week. As a part of Congo Week, we also have Congo in Harlem. And Congo in Harlem is where we bring Congolese filmmakers and artists and entertainers, intellectuals, practitioners to Harlem for a week to showcase Congo culture. So that's the context in which, at least one of the contexts in which we come to you tonight, and we're grateful again for my sister Adwa and the Institute for Karmic Guidance for bringing us in. This year is particularly important. Our esteemed elder and now ancestor John Henry Clark, he said that history is a clock that people use to tell their political and cultural time of day. History is a clock that people use to tell their political and cultural time of day. And if you follow what's unfolding on the continent today, history is moving at warp speed. It's difficult to keep up with the different movements, the range of geostrategic battle that's unfolding, whether it's competition between the US and China, or the US trying to stave off Russia and its engagement, whether it's in Libya or Sudan, or its backing of Sahel states, Ukraine jumping in the mix, siding with the terrorists in the Sahel state in an attempt to weaken Russia abroad. There's just a tremendous amount of intrigue around a continent that is vital to the planet, a continent that particularly those in the West Europeans have pillaged, at least in the modern iteration, for the past 500 years or so. And in the midst of what's currently unfolding, we're reminded of the centenary of some remarkable figures who serve as models for us as we continue the tradition of resistance and community building. As another esteemed elder and now ancestor, Professor Ron Walters, has articulated. He shared that, wherever we see Africans, there are two things that's almost always present, right? He said, one, there is resistance. Wherever Africans are found, you're going to find resistance. Wherever Africans are found, you're going to find community building. And he laid that out in one of his really powerful books, Pan-Africanism in the African Diaspora, an analysis of modern Afrocentric political movements. So with the centenary of Frantz Fanon from Martinique, of Malcolm X, Elhaj Malik El-Shabazz, of Patrice Lumumba, Medger Evers, it brings us back to Dr. Clark's quote about what time it is. It's been 100 years since those figures were born. So it presents a question to us, what are we doing in our time? How are we joining in the African struggle for liberation and sovereignty? And what Friends of Congo has done and continues to do is to center the heart of the African continent. Because we believe that that's the part of the continent that's suffered the most weathering attack on the part of European powers. Starting from the extraction of Africans from the continent in the late 1400s, early 1500s. We see that encroachment, that extractivism beginning, and we look at some of the studies that have been done by UNESCO, by Emory University, and its database on slave voyages. I'm going to put it in the chat. Slave voyages for you to check out. They stated that the Africans that were trafficked to the Americas during that period, almost half of them come from West Central Africa, which means the Congo region, the Congo Empire. So we see that Congo has been central to the exploitation of Africans, to the trafficking of Africans, to what our sister Maureen Barani calls the Maafa. So by virtue of that, it demands a particular emphasis on focus on the part of Africans globally, right? Because we know that that's been a point of attack. So if half of the Africans were, it wasn't just sufficient that half of the Africans were trafficked from that part of the continent, from the heart of the African continent, right? Ostensibly to power the advancement of capitalism on the part of European powers, right? And if you read Eric Williams' book, Capitalism and Slavery, he lays that out in a painstaking detail, the extent to which our labor and intellect, African labor and intellect, served as the engine for powering capitalism. There's a Harvard professor by the name of Sven Beckett. He wrote a book entitled, I think it's Cotton Empire or the Empire of Cotton, where he makes, he builds on, in essence, builds on Eric Williams' argument around the centrality of the extraction of human beings, Africans from the continent, being central to the advancement of capitalism and during the period of enslavement. And this is borne out as capitalism itself advances, because by the time we get to the industrial phase of capitalism, we see that Africa in general and Congo in particular continue to play a central role for the advancement of the European domination, for the European economies. By the time we get to the late 1800s, Europe deepens its engagement on the African continent through the Berlin Conference, which was also called the Congo Conference, 1884, 1885. And at that conference, Congo was given to King Leopold II. By the way, the conference was with 14 European powers or so, led by Otto von Bismarck out of Germany, influenced and prodded on by King Leopold II, of Belgium, right? And the United States was also party to the Berlin Conference. Of course, no African representation was there. So there at the Berlin Conference, European powers gathered, and a key motivation for them gathering at Berlin, 1884, 1885, is so that they could unify, right, around the exploitation of the African continent, of their establishing their spheres of influence, so that they wouldn't go to war against each other in pursuit of what they call the magnificent pie, right? If you consult works of Thomas Pakenham, for example, The Scramble for Africa, incredibly detailed work on how and why European powers pursued the continent at that time. If you read it, you have to read it, almost like with your holding your nose, because it's really a racist track. However, there's another really good book by the foremost author, biographer rather, of W.E.B. Du Bois, a gentleman by the name of David Levering Lewis. And he wrote a book, The Race to Fashada, where he documented the battle for Fashada on the Nile with Britain and France. So you have these European powers who came to an agreement so that they wouldn't go to war with each other. They unified in order to continue the extractive process. And central to that extractive process in the industrial phase was the Congo. And Congo was not colonized at first, like much of the rest of the continent. And Congo was given to King Leopold II of Belgium as his own personal property, right? That he ruled for a 23-year period, 1885 to 1908. And within that 23-year period, we see with alarming clarity and devastating brutality the central role of Africans and African resources powering the Industrial Revolution in Europe, where rubber, and to some extent ivory, but mainly rubber, was extracted during that 23-year period, ultimately to serve as the engine for the development and the advancement of the bicycle and auto industry in the West. And true to form and true to history, we see the Congolese people paying a devastating price, again, not only in terms of the brutality where if rubber quotas were not met, hands were chopped off in entire villages. If people were living in bestial conditions, virtual slavery, they call it slave labor, virtual slavery, all in an effort to extract the rubber. And by virtue of this devastating extractive process, the Congolese population was decimated by half, right? And estimated 10 million people perished in that enterprise, where King Leopold II made about $1 billion or so off that enterprise in modern day dollars, right? Really good book on this is King Leopold's Ghost by Adam Hochschild. So this continued pattern, that where the heart of the African continent itself serving as key to European development, at the same time being devastated. If you're there in DC, I think tomorrow, the African American Civil War Memorial Museum is going to be having a session at the Spingarn Center at Howard on campus, where they're going to delve into the life of George Washington Williams. George Washington Williams was a Civil War hero, fought in the Civil War when Abraham Lincoln made that declaration, not to free the slaves, but give the Africans the opportunity to fight for their freedom, right? And that's really what the proclamation was about, that they could pick up guns, which they were ready to do in order to free themselves. It wasn't like a paper that said, we're going to proclaim you free, and now you're free. No. Emancipation Proclamation gave Africans the right to pick up guns. And George Washington Williams was one of those who did that. Coming out of the Civil War, he served as an elected official in Ohio, studied at Howard and a few other universities. Some refer to him as the first African-American historian of note. And John Hope Franklin wrote a biography of George Washington Williams, a remarkable figure, African, who was one of the earliest to demonstrate Pan-African solidarity with the Congo from an anti-colonial stance, where he went to the Congo in 1890, heard all this talk coming out of King Leopold II, and see what was happening there. King Leopold II said, and the Europeans said, we were civilizing, the natives. Remember, colonialism was built on what Pakenham himself called the three C's, right? Europe said that we're bringing civilization to Africa, right? I know those of you who follow Brother Browder and the Nile Valley chuckle at that they're bringing civilization, but this is the roost that many of us still believe today, unfortunately, which demonstrates a need for Nile Valley education. But in any case, they said they were bringing one of the C's, civilization. Then they said a second C that they built colonialism on was Christianity. We're going to save your souls, right? And then the third C is commerce, right? The Congo, they call the Congo Free State. It was the Congo Free State that they named it, one of the early free trade zones where European powers could move freely, trade freely, right? So commerce, civilization, Christianity, right? So George Washington Williams said, I'm going to see what's going on. But when he got there in the Congo and saw what was unfolding, he wrote a letter to the king. He said, what is unfolding in the Congo is definitely not a civilization mission, right? But rather, it's crimes against humanity. And he wasn't the only one. You had William Shepherd and his wife, Lucy Gant, Presbyterian Ministries, one of the first, or the first, Lucy Gant, to translate one of the local languages, Chiluba, into English. Okay? So William Shepherd and Lucy Gant, and you had them documenting what was unfolding, the atrocities that would later be taken up by figures like Mark Twain, who wrote King Leopold's Soliloquy to mock satirical piece on the king. And there's a movement that built up around it. And you had another figure who some of us probably wouldn't look to and refer to as a Pan-Africanist, but Booker T. Washington. The same Booker T. Washington who inspired Marcus Garvey to come to the US and ultimately expand UNIA, Universal Negro Improvement Association, African Communities League, right? So Booker T. Washington himself became part of what they call a Congo Reform Association, initiated by two Europeans out of the UK, right? Ed Morrell and Roger Casement. So, and Booker T. Washington wrote Cruelty in the Congo, where he laid out, based on the evidence that he was getting from folks like Shepherd and stories like George Washington Williams, the extent of the brutality in the Congo. So that's the historical foundation, right? Where we look at the Congo in particular today, and Africa in general, where this extractive process, where the plunder of human and natural resources were indispensable to the advancement of Europe. You look today, people are even making the argument, France is in crisis. There are demonstrations, there are shortages, and there folks are making the argument, well, that's because France is being cut off from the thievery that is undertaken over decades under what they call France-Afrique, right? With Niger cutting off the uranium that powers France's homes and industries. While in Niger itself, you know, you have less than 10%. I don't even know if it's that much, the people who have access to electricity. But Paris is lit, right? The Eiffel Tower is lit. The Louvre is lit. So this extractive process is this plunder is a central element that Africans need to tackle. And Kwame Nkrumah, the first president of Ghana, laid it out really well in incredible work of his. And I highly recommend that everyone consult it. He wrote a book called Neocolonialism, the last stage of imperialism, right? In fact, he was, in a sense, it's an ode to Vladimir Lenin, who wrote Imperialism, or the highest stage of capitalism. So Nkrumah said, neocolonialism is the phase that we're in, the last stage of imperialism, where he provided a theoretical framing for our understanding what's currently unfolding on the continent, where we got our independence, fought for it, organized for it, died for it, but yet the continent is still trapped in the tentacles of the imperial powers. So Nkrumah said in his work, you know, in neocolonialism, the last stage of imperialism, that we control the levers, the political levers, but those are just decorations. These leaders that have come to power, they don't control the economy. And in his book, he laid out how Anglo-American in South Africa and Union Minière, a Belgian company in the Congo, were prima facie evidence of his argument. His book was so powerful and so damning of the imperial powers that the United States pressured him not to publish the book. It was published in 1965, right? And when he went ahead and published it, they took whatever aid that they were given to Ghana at the time. And within a year of Nkrumah publishing the book, he was overthrown. Now we know, you know, by the CIA. The work of Susan Williams, you know, White Malice, gives us some keen insight both into Nkrumah and into Lumumba. She stated that I wanted to look at Kwame Nkrumah and the relationship between Kwame Nkrumah and Patrice Lumumba, but every turn I made, the CIA kept getting in the way. So I was sharing this with my editor, and she said, well, write about it. So that's what she did in her book, White Malice. And I definitely recommend that to folks because one of the things in her book, it shows you the extent to which our institutions are infiltrated by the Central Intelligence Agency, either set up by them or financed and funded by them, all in an effort to undermine our march towards sovereignty, right? So in any case, this this battle, this continued pursuit of Africa's riches is as hot today as it was in 1960. It's as hot today as it was in 1885, 1884, right? It is as hot today as when European powers went to war against each other during the for hundreds of years, during the entire period of enslavement to control the slave trade. So what that says to us is we ought to be organizing, first understanding this history, as John Henry Clark says, what time it is, right? Understanding this history, but also organizing in a way that we're on a march toward sovereignty, right? And it's a dangerous march, as I've just shared, with the overthrow of Nkrumah, just based on his stance and his positioning, right? The first president of Ghana that brought Pan-Africanism, right, in its formal sense, to the African continent through the Pan-African conferences and congresses. It was out of the 1945 Manchester Congress that we saw the likes of, George Padmore, Ras McConnell, Kwame Nkrumah, Ezekwe, just a whole host of folks. In fact, within a few days, there'll be a Pan-African gathering in Ghana commemorating the 80th anniversary of the Manchester Congress, right? Which was the last major Pan-African Congress before the conferences began on the African continent. Of course, headed up by Nkrumah and Padmore himself, and also Ras McKinnon was there, and he's often overlooked as well. Highly recommend the works of Ras McKinnon. He wrote a book called Pan-Africanism from Within. Incredible insights into what was unfolding in Ghana and those who were rallying to the side of Nkrumah in his pursuit of the Pan-African project of the United States of Africa. So this moment that we're in this historic moment, and I would be remiss in speaking of a historic moment if I didn't acknowledge, especially speaking about Pan-Africanism, today, October 15th, which is the day that remarkable Pan-Africanists out of what used to be Upper Volta, that he renamed Burkina Faso, Thomas Sankara, was assassinated led by a close friend of his, Blaise Compaoré. And justice, in some sense, was served in that in 2014, young Pan-Africanists with their mamas and the market women in Burkina Faso rose up to overthrow or to chase Blaise Compaoré out of Burkina Faso, which, if you look back, contributed to setting the stage for what we see today, right? With Ibrahim Traoré at the head of Burkina Faso, channeling the spirit of Sankara based on his speeches, his actions as a head of state. But so critical as we look at Traoré up top to remember that he's a product, much the same as Chiani in Niger or Assimi Goïta in Mali. They're products of people who are fed up at the bottom, people who are organizing at the bottom. They're fed up with France Afrique and the CFA Franc and their puppet leaders, what the French call nègres de service, Negroes who are in service of France, right? They're fed up with it, and they organize and continue to organize against Macron, against France, against the financial stranglehold that France has on the currency of 14 West African states. So definitely big up to, we have to acknowledge and call his name, Thomas Sankara today. And in line with the historic moments, just tomorrow, we will all be commemorating the 30th, I think it's the 30th anniversary of the Million Man March, where Black men and women stood up here in the United States for dignity, for justice. So the historic march continues. Now, what's unfolding in the Congo today within this historic context? What do we have to say to Dr. Clark when he says history is a clock that people use to tell their political and cultural time of day? How are we responding to the continued scramble and pursuit of Africa's wealth, particularly under this administration? One of the things about this administration, we all have to admit that they are vulgar, or he is vulgar in his proclamations. He tells you, like, probably a classic example of this is that the United States no longer has a Department of Defense, right? I think it's been officially changed. They have a Department of War, right? They have a Department of War. That's what Trump said. I want a Department of War. I want to go back to the early 1900s. It was the Department of War, not the Department of Defense, right? It's not, we're not hiding, what we're about. And the U.S. in order for you to have a Department of War, you have to have minerals to power your war industry. There is no military industry without resources, and we know it. And Congo has played a central role on that. We just look at uranium. We talked about uranium between Niger and France, but the entering into the nuclear phase, right? In this race between the United States and the Soviet Union and the coming out of World War II, right? It was the United States that, through its Manhattan Project, right, that developed the first atomic weapon that it ultimately dropped on Japan. And it was the uranium out of Congo that made that possible. Some came out of Canada, but the overwhelming majority of uranium came out of Congo, and the best, highest quality. And the same Susan Williams wrote a book which is worth consulting as well, Spies in the Congo, right? So that scramble and the articulation of it by this administration is really plain talk. So what is the administration saying, right? What's unfolding in the Congo? Congo has been the victim, the Congolese people, the victim of a 30-year war of aggression and plunder, led by Paul Kagame of Rwanda, Yoweri Museveni of Uganda, with the full backing of the United States, the UK, and the European powers. The war of aggression that wars of aggression that they've led against the Congo could not have happened without the backing of the US and Europe, right? When the United States decided that its longtime dictator, Joseph Desiré Mobutu, was no longer going to be viable in what they did, instead of this democratic nation supporting democratic movements in the Congo, they went to their agents, what Thomas Sankara called agents of neocolonialism, contrary to much popular belief. Make no mistake about it. Paul Kagame of Rwanda, he's an agent. That Paul Kagame, who was trained in the United States at Fort Leavenworth, he's an agent of imperialism, right? The same with Yoweri Museveni. As much as they proclaim their Pan-Africanism, and as much as Kagame in speeches rails at Europeans, he said, They said to the Belgians, tell them to go to hell. If they want to sanction me, tell them to go to hell. And then we as Africans cheer, yeah. So can you imagine Kagame telling, it's like, Belgium, go to hell. But we don't know, or most of us don't know, that he aggressively pursued the presidency of the Francophonie, right? He lobbied Macron to become the president of the Francophonie, for his former foreign minister, Louise Mushikiwabo, to become the secretary general of the Francophonie. For those of you who may or may not know about the Francophonie is the French corollary to the British Commonwealth. And it's through the Francophonie that France, pursues its soft power. And the head of that soft power pursuit, not just in Africa, but in the world, the head of the France's soft power pursuit is a Rwandan, Louise Mushikiwabo. Now, think about it, right? You have in West Africa, the Alliance of Sahel States, AES, they're telling France to go to hell. They're not only telling them that, they're kicking them out. It's not just rhetoric. They told the soldiers to leave, the ambassadors to leave, the companies to leave, nationalize the mines. This is what we see as the vanguard of African revolution and sovereignty in West Africa, the Alliance of Sahel States. So you have them on that hand, right, kicking France out. But then you have a landlocked country in East Central Africa, Rwanda, getting all up into France's soft power machinery, managing it, running it. So the contradiction is stark, right? That should say to us, those of us who are being fed what really came from Bill Clinton and Madeleine Albright and Susan Rice in the 1980s, that Paul Kagame is a Pan-Africanist. The Clinton went to travel to Africa in 1998. In Entebbe, out of Entebbe in Uganda, they came up with what are called the Entebbe Principles. Highly recommend that you just do a Google search, Entebbe Principles, Bill Clinton, where he identified what he called a new breed of African leaders, Pan-African leaders, Renaissance leaders. He had chief among them Paul Kagame, Yoweri Museveni. He had Meles Zenawi of Ethiopia. And they put a high-octane propaganda machine to feed that to Africans, that these are the ones that you need to be following. And we see so many Africans today believe in that, right? These are the models. This is what Clinton said. This is what Albright said. This is what Susan Rice said, right? These are the models. While they're killing Africans. They got the blood of millions of Africans on their hands, these guys, right? They're really sociopaths, right? They've invaded other African countries, right? They're authoritarian figures. They crush their own population, right? And they benefit from America's largesse. They get training. The soldiers get training. Of course, Kagame himself was at Fort Leavenworth. He sent his son, one of Kagame's son, to West Point. Museveni's son graduated from Fort Leavenworth, right? So they get military training. Uganda sends a soldier to Iraq to fight, to support the US's war in Iraq. They get intelligence, right? Equipment, money, $150 million a year to Rwanda. So they benefit from the empire. They're they're sucking on the breasts of the empire. That's not the model. That's not the modern model that we see today. We don't even have to go back historically and talk about Ahmed Sekou Touré or Kwame Nkrumah or Patrice Lumumba. We can just look right there today. Talk about Goita and Chiani and Traore. That's not what they're doing, right? Kagame himself getting 20 million euros from the European Union at the behest of Macron because he's sending his soldiers to Mozambique Cabo Delgado to combat rebel groups there in the interest of total energies. So mercenaries for Western corporations. That's not a Pan-African model. No matter how clean your streets are, no matter how few or little plastic bags that you have in Kigali, you have a hard time selling that, stacking that up against the killing that you're doing in the Congo. So in any case, these figures, unlike the Nkrumahs, the Sekou Tourés, the Modiba Keitas, who rallied around the Congo, rallied around Lumumba, right? These figures are ravaging the Congo. That's what time it is. They're ravaging the Congo and feeding us propaganda for us to believe that they're acting in the interests of Africans while they're killing Africans in the Congo. Congo is the space of the deadliest conflict in the world since World War II. An estimated 6 million people have perished, half of them children under the age of 5, due to successive invasions that was backed by the West, right? Rwanda and Uganda invaded 1996, overthrew Mobutu. They chased him in May of 1997, installed Kabila, who was a Lumumbis, who worked with Che Guevara when Che went to the Congo in 1965. Che wasn't particularly impressed with Kabila. Said that with leaders like these, Che said that Congo, Africa will be colonized for another 100 years. Because he felt they weren't serious. They weren't serious revolutionaries. So Kabila was installed. It wasn't his army or anything like that. That it was Rwanda's army. It was Uganda's army. And Angola played a role in the first invasion in 1996 for its own regional strategic interests, because Mobutu, who was a company man, he'd been a company man since 1958 on the payroll of the CIA, he was a conduit to Jonas Savimbi of UNITA in Angola, that waged that brutal civil war, right? So that was Angola's interest. Once they were able to cut and sever the umbilical cord between Savimbi and Mobutu, then they were able to march towards peace in Angola. That was their strategic interest. But when Kabila was installed in 97, and he told the Rwandans, all right, you got me in power, told the Ugandans, you got me in power, we got it from here. Congolese are gonna roll with it. And they're like, it doesn't work like that. So when Kabila kicked him out, he told him to leave. In fact, the Rwandans, to show how embedded Rwanda was in the Congo, there's a guy by the name of James Kabarebe. They appointed him the head of the Congolese military. He was Rwandan. It wasn't like a Pan-African solidarity undertaking. It was an infiltration. Kabila told him to go, get out. So they're like, okay, we're leaving. But then they came back, 1998, August, and invaded a second time. It's for that second invasion that we saw the deadliest part of the conflict, where there's some 11 countries were involved. Kabila had to go to Southern African Development Community with Mugabe in Zimbabwe and Dos Santos, in Angola and Namibia and South Africa, Tanzania, they all came together to support Kabila and chased, because they knew it was a US-backed, a Western-backed invasion, and chased Rwanda and Uganda. So those agents are still operating. Kagame's been in power for 25 years. Museveni is on the verge of being in power for 40 years. And they've had Central Africa, the Great Lakes, encased in a death trap, right? And what we've seen since January of this year is an uptick in the violence, where Rwanda has backed a militia group called M23, sent in as soldiers, providing more training, command and control, where they're capturing territory. They've captured territory. They captured the two largest cities in the eastern Congo, right? They've captured mines. One mine that they've captured is a coltan mine, the largest coltan mine in the world. It's Rubaya. And now Donald Trump is entering into the fray and saying, I'm going to bring peace and I'm going to have a minerals deal. His campaign, his finance co-chair, gentleman by the name of Gentry Beach out of Texas, he's got his eyes set on the coltan mines that's under the control of Rwanda's M23. Even before Gentry Beach entered into the picture, Donald Trump had appointed what they call a special advisor for Africa, a gentleman by the name of Massad Boulos, a Lebanese. And Massad Boulos went to the region, is the emissary of Donald Trump, trying to bring peace through dollars, because he's like, okay, if you guys have peace, we're going to bring investments. And it just so happened that the Rwanda-backed militia group M23, they captured an area called Walikale. And Walikale is rich in tin. And there's an American company there called Alphamine that's operating. When they captured Walikale, the American company had to shut down. The American company shut down, tin prices on the market skyrocketed because that supply was cut off, which is an indication of the value or the importance of Congo to the tin market, right? And Boulos, in going to the region, talking to Tshisekedi, the president of the DR Congo, talking with Kagame, he impressed upon them, listen, we'd like our American company to start operations again, right? We're coming in. The Trump administration is coming in. So Kagame responded in kind, and they lift the siege of Walikale. Alphamine went back in, they started operating again, tin prices came down. So the economic drivers, right? You have Eric Prince from Blackwater. He's in the mix, offering to support, provide security for the mines in the east of the Congo that American investors are supposed to come in and invest in. You have the likes of Bill Gates and Jeff Bezos. Bill Gates, Microsoft, or Microsoft, Jeff Bezos, Amazon, Washington Post right here in DC. Michael Bloomberg out of New York. They have a company called Cobalt Metals. Cobalt Metals is based in Berkeley, California. They're a major supporter of a division, a school at Stanford University called the Doerr School of Sustainability. They've raised $1 billion this year to invest in the Congo through Cobalt Metals. They're in pursuit of a lithium mine in the southeast of the Congo, in a place called Manono, apparently one of the largest lithium deposits found in the world. So you have the billionaire class that's in hot pursuit. You have divisions of the US government, the Export-Import Bank and the International Finance Development Corporation, who's putting together $2.5 billion to match another $2.5 billion by Wall Street hedge fund called Oyan, $5 billion package to secure and back the investments that are going into the Congo. So you see the picture where the heart of the African continent is being primed to be captured by Western elites coming out of Washington, government figures, the billionaire class, right? That's what's happening as we speak. Now, if we subscribe to the arguments of the Pan-Africanists coming out of independence in the 1960s about the centrality of Congo to the future of the African continent, then we all should be alarmed and concerned, right? If we subscribe to what Kwame Nkrumah laid out in one of his over a dozen books, this one is The Challenge of Congo, where he saw Congo serving as the capital for the United States of Africa. Right? He's not the only one. Sheikh Anta Diop in his works, in the Federated States, talks about Congo's and Congo's role, ultimate role to serve as the industrial engine for the development of the African continent. Right? So now Americans are coming in, and that's just one part of the battle, right? One part of the battle. Another part of the battle and the pursuit is to confront China in the Congo. And China controls about 80% of the mines, right? That the United States cannot get access to. So US is combating China in the global landscape, in the geopolitical chessboard. And China has worked its way around the world, leading with its Belt and Road Initiative in order to engage countries of the global south, some in the north too, into its orbit, right? So the United States, the European Union, the G7, they said we need to combat China. We need to combat China's influence. Can't have China controlling all of these minerals that are vital to our aerospace industry, vital to our military industry, vital to our tech industry, indispensable for a green energy transition, vital to the AI industry, right? All these minerals are key to power these industries. You know, some of you may remember Ali Mazrui of the Africans, right? Ali Mazrui, he at the time, it was in the 80s or so, he said that if he was talking about the Congo, he said if Congo stopped its cobalt from coming out of the country, then it was Zaire. It would ground the entire NATO flotilla because they need the cobalt for their airplanes, their jets, right? So these nations, these formations, European Union, G7, United States, they all came together and they established what they call the Partnership for Global Infrastructure and Investment. Partnership for Global Infrastructure and Investment. It's a framework that's supposed to compete with China's Belt and Road Initiative, where they say they're going to go into global south countries and build value locally to compete with China, so that resources that are being extracted raw, shipped out, value can be added at the bottom of that supply chain. And Congo is the launching pad for that. Right? They invested billions of dollars in what they call the Lobito Corridor. The Lobito Corridor is tied to Lobito, Angola. It's a port in Angola. And the Chinese have built a rail from the port inland. And the corridor, Europeans and US invested to expand that rail line from the border of Angola right into the heart of the mining center in the Congo, a place called Kolwezi. So you have a rail line running from Kolwezi through the Congo, going west, out to the port in Angola. Some of you may have heard about it in the news when Biden was leaving office in December of 2024. He made a trip to Angola to visit the Lobito Corridor, right? And he was saying that this is one of the crowning achievements of his administration in Africa, investing in the Lobito Corridor. Lobito Corridor, the benefits of it is supposed to cut the time that it takes to get the minerals out of the Congo to the ocean by a third. Take about 30 days or so through traditional routes, where it either goes through Tanzania, the minerals that are coming out of the Congo go through Tanzania, out through the Indian Ocean, or the trucks drive them down through South Africa, go out through Durban, or through Namibia, through Walvis Bay. Takes about a month or so, and they're saying that, and this rail line take about 8 days. So you get the minerals out faster, more efficiently, save time, and it is this Lobito Corridor that the U.S. is saying that they're going to challenge China, which is not really true when you look into it, because the first shipment of copper that came out of there on the Lobito corridor occurred in end of December 2023, early January 2024. It was by a Chinese and a Canadian company that had the first shipment going out on the line. So in any case, all of this is happening above the heads of the Congolese people. It's all happening at where they don't really have a say, right? They're not engaged. They don't have access to that, right? When the U.S. sold one of its mines in the Congo, it was owned by a U.S. company called Freeport-McMoRan out of Arizona with John McCain. They had a concession called Tenki Fungurume in the Congo. And the Freeport ran into debt. It's a copper and cobalt mine. And they sold it to a Chinese company called China Molybdenum. And interestingly enough, it was Joe Biden's son, one of his sons, Hunter Biden. His company played a role in negotiating the deal to sell the American company to the Chinese, right? So, but the Congolese people didn't have a say in that. You know, it's often said that Congo produces 70% of the world's cobalt, right? And for cobalt, those of you who may not know, it's a key ingredient, indispensable ingredient at this moment for batteries, right? Remember, industries are talking about making this energy transition, moving from the combustion engine to electric vehicles, right? Which Detroit is doing, right? And setting up solar panels and wind turbines. Well, they're battery powers, all these packs. And the key ingredient in these batteries is a mineral called cobalt. And Congo produces 70% of the world's cobalt. Some people refer to Congo as the Saudi Arabia of the green energy transition. But it's kind of a misnomer, because it's not Congo that produces 70% of cobalt. It's Chinese companies in Congo that produces 70% of the cobalt, right? Cobalt that they then extract to China and they refine and process it. China controls 80% of the processing of cobalt for batteries, right? Not Congo, not Congolese, not the Angolans, not the Zambians, right? So that battle is engaged by the U.S. To compete with China in the Congo. And in the meanwhile, so you have neighboring countries, agents of neocolonialism, invading, destabilizing from the east, extracting minerals from the Congo, selling it out to the West. The European Union entered into a critical minerals deal with Rwanda, right? For the minerals that Rwanda is stealing from the Congo, right? So that's happening. And then you have the US competing with China through, or think it's competing with China through its, the Lobito corridor in an effort to combat the China's Belt and Road Initiative. And at the same time, in Kinshasa, you have a weak president who himself is also an agent of neocolonialism, and Felix Tshisekedi, right? So the people are trapped among these agents in this geostrategic battle. But that doesn't mean that they're lying down and that they're doing nothing. They're organizing locally. We work with a coalition called the Basanja Coalition. They're in the heart of the rainforest in the north of the country, in the heart of the rainforest in the west, and where the peatlands are. They're on the front lines in the east. They're in the mines in the south, and they're organizing locally in an effort to build from the bottom up to reclaim their land, reclaim their wealth, right? Reclaim their resources, in a pursuit of resource sovereignty, right? So I mentioned all of this that's happening, but it's important for us to know that Congolese are not just dying. You know, if you look at some social media, they bring a camera and say, look at this, you know, this woman has been raped, and look at it. That's happening, but people are resisting. We have a remarkable sister by the name of Justine Masika. She wrote a book, Women Resist War. Women Resist War. All right, she's part of the Basanja Coalition. They're resisting, they're organizing. I'm going to show you just a short clip before we wrap up. I'll show you a short clip. Hopefully I do this right. Sister Ajo, make sure I get it. Guess I don't see it now. Let me pull it up. Okay, let me try again. I'm going to try and pull it up this here. Let's see. That's it. Almost always happens. Okay. Let's see if I can get it. Oh, I think I know where it is. Okay. Let's see. Boom, boom, boom. Here we go. Okay. Let's see if we can get it. Share screen. Boom, 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 boom. And I don't see it still. Distribute, boom, boom. Okay, here we go. Okay. Let me know if you can hear it okay.
You can hear it.
Okay, fantastic.
Tufunge kazi. Unijibu nifunge kazi. Aba bakrezer mnona. Beku bakrezer vale basha kuyenga masomo. Beku bakrezer vale basha kuyenga mabar, hotel,
Tamo na grama avião e na chuca, les expatriés. Aba kwa kutu contempler ma beauté. Ba na kwa njia sous-soli yetu.
Vous voyez, les Chinois les Américains, déjà il faut tout un mois dans l'histoire de trois espaces. Le mini est une chose.
Okay, so this is a short clip of a movie called Mikuba, where it's being screened for Congo Week. If you want to get access to it, along with a range of other films, make sure you go to congoweek.org. I'll put it in the chat. But the point I wanted to make is that I know I've said a lot tonight, probably too much. But that one thing that is so vital for everybody to leave with, the heart of the African continent is under attack, but the people inhabiting that space are not just laying down, they're organizing, they're in coalitions, they're building, right? They are laser focused on fulfilling on the legacy of Lumumba, right? Remember, Lumumba was overthrown, assassinated because he wanted the wealth of the Congo to be controlled by the Congolese people for the benefit of Congo in particular and Africa in general. So that spirit of the pursuit of resource sovereignty, controlling of the affairs of the heart of the African continent is very much in effect to this very day. And they're reaching out for solidarity. They have the answers, they have the solutions, they're pursuing them, they want to grow them, they want to expand them, right? They're clear about how the world covets the Congo, especially in this era where Congo sits at the nexus of the climate crisis, being a part of the second largest rainforest in the world, but yet sequestering more carbon than the Amazon, Borneo combined, home to the largest tropical peatlands, and at the same time, indispensable to this green energy transition that is supposed to mitigate the climate crisis. So the Congolese people are clear about that. They're clear about the centrality of the Congo to the future of Africa. Frantz Fanon, who commemorating the 100-year anniversary of his birth, he wrote a book entitled Toward the African Revolution, or the African Revolution, Toward the African Revolution. And he said in there, let us not forget the fate of all of us is at stake in the Congo. And I'll leave you with that. Let us not forget that the fate of all of us is at stake in the Congo. And with those prescient words from remarkable revolutionary Frantz Fanon.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that great presentation. Family, please join me in sending Brother Maurice some virtual love. We are asking, yes, the hearts and the claps are coming through. Absolutely. Your depth and breadth of knowledge about the Congo is just amazing. And I do ask, family, that you present your questions for Brother Maurice. If you put them in the Q&A box, we will be able to see the questions and ask those questions. So I did post in the chat links to Friends of the Congo and CongoWeek.org, as well as CongoJustice.org. So do take a look at those websites to get more information. Okay, so there was, before I get into the question on the Congo, there was a comment you had made, I guess, earlier, and they wanted to know if you could clarify the name of the model that you mentioned that was associated with Bill Clinton.
Yes, Entebbe principles.
Entebbe principles, okay. All right, so that was for Wendy. There you have it. All right, so our first question is coming from Henry, and he asked, why haven't Belgium, Rwanda, or Uganda, why haven't they paid reparations to DRC?
Well, interestingly enough, Uganda has paid reparations to DRC. The DRC brought Uganda to the International Court of Justice in 2005, and the International Court of Justice ruled in favor of the DRC, that the DRC is entitled to reparations from Uganda for war crimes, crimes against humanity, crimes of plunder, and at the time they were talking about $2 billion in reparations. Current President Tshisekedi worked it out, and I think it's down to hundreds of millions, $300 million or so. And I think they've paid half of it so far. But it hasn't, true to the corrupt government in Kinshasa, those reparations haven't gone down to the people. There's a place in the Congo, area in the Congo called Kisangani. Kisangani is a famous area. It was the home base of Patrice Lumumba. V.S. Naipaul, the Indian writer, wrote a book about it called A Bend in the River. And in Kisangani in 2000, Congo had its own 6-day war where, you know, I shared with you how Rwanda and Uganda joined with each other to invade Congo a number of times and support militia groups in the Congo. But in 2000, they actually fought each other. The Rwandan soldiers fought the Ugandan soldiers on Congolese soil in what they call the Six-Day War. And there's a film that's, I need to put that film up. There's a film by a Congolese filmmaker, Diodore Hamdi, entitled Downstream to Kinshasa, right? You know, so in any case, the people there suffered the brunt of that battle between Rwanda and Uganda on Congolese soil. When I say that these nations have ravaged the Congo, it's not just that they've invaded the Congo, they've actually gone in and battled each other, killing, you know, scores of people and injuring, you know, just loads of people in Kisangani. So the reparations did come through that way. The government tried at a time, tried to bring Rwanda to the International Court of Justice, but Rwanda, you know, is not party. You have to be party to the Court of Justice in order to, for a case to be brought. Now, the Lumumba family, they've brought suit. They're seeking reparations in Belgium for what was done to their father by Belgium. But that's, you know, that hasn't been resolved yet. So those are the efforts that are on the way now. The interesting thing is when it comes to you probably need a different type of leadership in the Congo to really fully pursue the kind of reparations. And I say that because you could be organized to pursue reparations. Say, okay, we're going to get reparations from Belgium, but if you have as the head of your state is a neo-colonial leader like Felix Tshisekedi is, it would make, you know, he'll be on one side saying that no reparations is needed. He'll be there thanking, you know, some European countries are repatriating the cultural work of Africans. And he's one of those guys who say, thank you for keeping our mass and our cultural productions, right? Our spiritual emblems. Thank you for preserving them for all these years, right? That's his outlook. So maybe a bit challenging, you know, until you get really a head of state that's grounded in the African experience, and one that doesn't look to Europe for salvation, which is what the current president of the Congo, which is a perspective of the current president of the Congo.
Okay, so on those lines, actually Basil has a question that really kind of speaks to what you just ended with. And Basil asks, can you elaborate on the degree of difficulty facing the leaders in the Congo to unite with other leaders in hopes of creating unity in the region?
When you say leaders unite with other leaders, you're talking about other heads of state, government officials, or you're talking about other Pan-African formations at the grassroots level? Just a clarity, if you can clarify that.
Basil, if you could clarify that. If not, because I'm not sure.
Let me say that whether it is or not,
maybe both of them.
So in
at the grassroots level.
At the grassroots level, what we've seen throughout West Africa are these young people who they rose up in Burkina Faso to get rid of Blaise Compaoré. This is like between 2011 and 2015. They rose up in Burkina Faso to get rid of Blaise Compaoré. They rose up in Senegal to block Abdoulaye Wade. Because remember, Abdoulaye Wade in Senegal, he came from the opposition, got in power. Once he got in power, and it was time for him to leave, he didn't want to leave, right? Just like Macky Sall, right? He didn't want to leave. So young people, hip hop artists, they all gathered and they organized, rallied the Senegalese people to get rid of Abdoulaye Wade. And that's why, in part, you see the leadership you see in Kenya, in Senegal today is a product of that with Jume Faye, right? So these young people in West Africa, they joined up with young people in the Congo. At the time, the Congolese president, Joseph Kabila, he didn't want to leave power. So they reached out in a Pan-African formation, union, solidarity, and the youth from Burkina Faso, the youth from Senegal, they all descended on Kinshasa, 2015, to start, building, saying, hey, if we did it in Senegal, if we did it in Burkina Faso, we can chase the leader in Congo that wants to stay. Well, they were crushed, right? Kabila crushed them. He arrested the young people from Senegal, put the Congolese youth in jail, and then others of them ran into exile. So there was an attempt. Now, this movement among the youth, they had their weaknesses, right? Of course, they wanted to chase authoritarian figures from power who wanted to hold on to power and block the people from having a say who leads them. But they weren't anti-imperialists, right? They were friendly with the US, right? So some of them were instruments or instrumentalized by the US, almost within the context of those color revolutions. I don't know if you've heard of the color revolutions. The color revolutions are where the US, under the guise of promoting democracy, USAID, International Republican Institute, National Endowment for Democracy, National Democratic Institute, they all go in and say they're training young people to promote democracy, right, in their countries, when they're really just fomenting instability against governments that that do not act in the U.S. interest. So they use they try to do it in Cuba as well. They use hip hop, use the arts, use soft power, basically, right? The kind of soft power that Kagame is supporting is promoting with France. So that was the weakness of the youth movement, that they weren't anti-imperialists, like what we see today. The Goitas, the Chianis, the Traores, and not only are they pursuing African sovereignty, but they're anti-imperialists, right? They're not looking to come to Washington to get anything from Washington, right? Even today, this week, right now, I can't tell you how many Congolese officials are in Washington, right? Trying to work out these deals, these minerals deals that Trump is talking about. So it has happened, and it continues to happen. The formation that we work with, they were just in Kenya, grounding with organizers in Kenya, learning from each other, building with each other. So it is happening at the grassroots level.
Okay, great. So if you could go back just a little bit about the conflict with Rwanda, can you speak to how that began? And is there any link to the Rwanda crisis from the 90s? And how did this conflict arise with Rwanda being used in that way in the Congo?
Sure. I'll try to be really brief. This is a little backdrop. To talk about Rwanda, you have to talk about Uganda, right? Where Museveni captured power by arms in 1986. And when he did that, you had Rwandan Tutsi, quote unquote Tutsi, refugees who were driven from Rwanda that were in Uganda, and they're elsewhere as well. One of them, Paul Kagame, he served, when Museveni took power, he served as Museveni's chief of intelligence, right? Even though he was a Rwandan. And it wasn't just his serving as Museveni's chief of intelligence, but they were preparing to go back to Rwanda to take power, right? That's what they were organizing to do. out of Uganda. And Kagame, and he had what they called the Rwandan Patriotic Front, the RPF. They invaded Rwanda in 1990, right? That's when the president of Rwanda, Juvenal Habyarimana, was in power. And between 1990 and 1994, there are battles that were taking place. Like rebel groups coming out of Uganda. I wish I had a map I could pull up, invading Rwanda, their bordering countries, right in the area. And a peace agreement called the Arusha Accords was on the table, where the Tutsis who had been in exile would be able to come in, participate in a democratic process. Now, if you know anything about Rwanda and the divide, 8 out of 10 Rwandans are Hutu and 2 out of 10 Tutsi. So if you're going to have a process, a democratic process, that based on voting and people vote along ethnic lines, the Tutsis will never get power, right? So Kagame was participating in the peace talks, but all the while he was building up his military force with Uganda. And in 1994, according to documented evidence to this date, Paul Kagame and the Rwandan Patriotic Front, they shot down a plane that had the presidents of Rwanda and Burundi in 1994, in April of 1994, shot it down. And that action triggered the genocide, now what is really interesting for such a monumentous event, right, that triggered the genocide, the shooting down of this plane, people who know about Rwandan genocide probably don't even know about the shooting down of the plane that killed two African presidents, right? But yet, even when they had the International Criminal Tribunal in Rwanda, that was shut down. And lead investigators like Carla Del Ponte, former Prime Minister of Ireland, I think she was, wanted to investigate, well, what about this plane? What role did it play in triggering the genocide? Shut down, right? So from that point on, you saw this cocoon of protection around Kagame, that the crimes that he had committed in Rwanda, invading in 1990, the shooting down of the planes, those are all suppressed. The one story that kept coming out by the high-powered propaganda machine is that he stopped the genocide, right? Kagame stopped the genocide. So in any case, when Kagame and his RPF took power, the only way they could have taken power in Rwanda was militarily. The Hutu population and the militias ran into the Congo, and Kagame pursued them in the Congo. A really good book to read to get that story is Howard French. He's a New York Times reporter, but it's a pretty good book. It's called A Continent for the Taking, A Continent for the Taking. So since that time, Kagame's rationale for being in the Congo is that he's pursuing these militias that participated in the genocide and using, but what Rwanda does, it weaponizes genocide in the same way that Israel weaponizes genocide, right? They say, well, we're victims of genocide, which they are, right? Therefore, we're beyond reproach, right? We can commit whatever crimes that we want, right? So Netanyahu can wage a genocidal war against the Palestinians and say, well, we're saying never again, as they commit a genocide. So and then you have the backing, they serve the interests. It's about, when you talk about states, it's about interests. And Kagame is willing to serve the West. I'll give you a few examples. When Netanyahu wanted to get rid of asylees in Israel, Kagame said, send them here to Rwanda. when Boris Johnson in England wanted to get rid of asylees out of England, Kagame said, send them here to Rwanda, right? It was the British courts that put a stop to that. Fast forward to today when Donald Trump say, hey, we want to get rid of, asylees. Kagame says, send them to Rwanda. He's already received one, an Iraqi that was sent to Rwanda, and is in line to receive more. I think like $100,000 a head or something like that. So he's of service. So that I hope that helps to respond to the question.
Yes, yes, indeed. Thank you so much. And the final question for the evening, not really a question, but if you can speak to other events or upcoming programming that you all are having, how people can support, connect, if you can just speak to that.
Yes, please. I'm going to put a link. I already put the Congo Week link in the chat. I'm going to put a link in the chat that I encourage everybody to share. Even if you don't do anything on it, send it to people. It's called freecongo.org. There you can support humanitarian projects. You can join the movement. You can get your children to sign up to be interns with us and volunteer with us. You can invite us into your communities, into your faith institutions, into your workplace, wherever. We'll come. So we encourage you to do that. We're building a global movement in support of the Congo, and it's growing. It's growing substantially, and we want more people to be a part of it. As a part of that global movement, we put on Congo Week, and Congo Week we have events in DC. We're going to have our sisters, Sweet Honey on the Rock, Ayana Gregory, Navasha Day, Sister Laini, sister poet, just a remarkable sisters. They supported us last year with an incredible concert in Southwest DC. And we're supposed to do it on October the 26th, but we moved it to November 2nd. So I'm going to send you that information, Audra, that you can share with a group. That's a great way to come out, support our sisters, remarkable artists, musicians who are doing a benefit concert to support the Congo, right? So we'll have more information about that we'll get out to you. If you're up there in Harlem, we have Congo in Harlem. We're going to kick off Congo in Harlem on Sunday at the Afrika Center. We're right up there off of 340 on Malcolm X Boulevard in Harlem, 343 Malcolm X Boulevard. Come through all next week at the Maisel Cinema. We'll be screening films on Lumumba, films on the Congo, just some really good programming for next week. We're going to be in Brooklyn. If any of you are in Brooklyn, they're going to have a fundraiser on the 23rd of Brooklyn at Sincerely Tommy. Sincerely Tommy, I'll put that in the chat. Sincerely Tommy in Brooklyn, Tommy. Thursday, October 23rd. So come out and see us. We're going to be in Atlanta. We're in Atlanta on Friday. So all of this is on our website. You can go to congoweek.org. If you go to congoweek.org, there's an events calendar there that you can check out. It has where the events are taking place, whether they're in person or they're virtual. We'll be doing a virtual presentation every day where you get to engage folks on the front lines in the Congo. So you can check that out. So congoweek.org, freecongo.org, you get all the information about how to learn more, to support folks on the front line, support the humanitarian project. We have a GoFundMe campaign. You go to freecongo.org, it takes you right to that GoFundMe campaign. There's a banner on the page. You can support efforts on the ground that's being led by Congolese. And then, to join the overall movement, those two websites, congoweek.org and freecongo.org. And just thank you all so much for giving us this platform to share with you the work we're doing, how you can get involved, how vital the Congo is to the future of the continent. And by virtue of it being vital to the future of the continent, it's vital to our future. We're talking about freedom for Africans at home and for Africans abroad.
Wonderful. Thank you again. Another year, another great
Yes.
presentation. We, of course, look forward to continuing this partnership. I did
Yes.
put the links in the chat for everyone, so please feel free to scroll to see the various links that were mentioned throughout tonight's presentation. Another link I did put in the chat that you mentioned was slavevoyages.com. And please go check out that website. Very fascinating. And it actually connects to next month's Wisdom Wednesday,
Mm.
which will feature Brother Kamal Siddiqui, who will be speaking on salvaging slave ships. He is a scuba diver and he does this for a living. So he does that. So
And a
he'll
supporter
be
of our work, Brother Siddiqui. Got to
yes,
give shout
yes,
out to him.
indeed.
Much love to him.
Yes. So he will be speaking on November 19th. And we definitely invite you all to come back, tell a friend. Thank you all for joining us. This will conclude our Wisdom Wednesday presentation. Brother Maurice, do you have any final closing remarks?
Yeah, just filled with gratitude. Gratitude for you spending the time and listening, and gratitude for you sharing our work and taking interest. Really grateful to the Institute for Karmic Guidance, Wisdom Wednesday family, and to you, Sister
Absolutely.
Adjoa and
Yes.
Brother Tony and Sister Atlantis. Much
Yes.
love, much
Yes,
gratitude.
indeed. Absolutely. Our
Mm,
pleasure.
yeah.
Thank you, family. That concludes tonight's program. Peace. Be well.
Peace, peace.